Okay.
Okay,
I'm ready.
Yeah. All right. Okay, well, we'll jump right in. First of all, I became familiar with you. I saw the Last Supper tour in Toronto on and that was my first introduction to you. I had no idea who you were, who was going to be doing the female vocals for the band, and I think you blew the whole audience away with what you were.
Thank you. In a good way,
yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, first of all, we'll start there. How did you get involved with Steve doing that work, and then I guess Slice of Life too, you were a part of. So yeah, we'll start there with how you got involved in being the new.
So it was very start of 2011, and a friend of mine messaged me and said, Steve Ignorant's looking for a new vocalist to do the Crass tour. And I was like, oh, I remember Crass, because I'd a few years earlier, I guested with a band and sung a cover of Our Wedding for like a Crass sort of tribute compilation. So that was kind of my first introduction to Crass, really. So that was probably about 2003. And I remember hearing Penis Envy for the first time and just being like, why have I never heard this before? Like, why have I not engaged with Crass before? Because I was completely blown away by that. So anyway, long story short, I went down, I found out about the job. I got in touch with Steve's then manager, and I was told, can you come down to London tomorrow to do the audition?
Where were you at that time?
I lived in Manchester at the time.
Okay.
So really, it's only a couple of hours on the train, but it would have meant I had to very very sweet talk. That doesn't make any sense. I had to sweet talk one of my colleagues into covering for me at work, and basically had to learn 3 Crass songs in the space of an evening, and then went and auditioned, and they liked what I did and asked me to join. So
from there, you ended up, that tour went quite a few countries. Like you were down in even Australia, and like it was all over the place.
Yeah, so when I first joined, the initial plan, because they'd already done the UK and Europe at that point with a different female vocalist, Becky Stratton, and she couldn't carry on with the tour, which is how I got involved. So we did America and Canada and Australia and New Zealand, and we were supposed to do Japan, but I remember it was on my birthday, the 11th of March. That was when there was a huge tsunami and earthquake, so it devastated a lot of places in Japan, so that we had to pull that kind of leg of the tour. And then the final gig we did with that band, with the Last Supper band, was at Shepherd's Bush Empire in London, which is like a really cool old theatre. And then that was kind of it for a long time. But Slice of Life came about when, coming back from the Australian leg of that tour, we were grounded in Sydney. There was it was the Chilean ash cloud, which kind of devastated a lot of the airspace at the time, and we were sort of grounded for a day. And me and Steve and Pete Wilson, who was then playing bass in the band, now plays guitar in the Ignorant band. We were just chatting and having a drink, and Miles Davis came on in the hotel bar, and Steve was saying, I'd love to do something where it's kind of more like this, it's more jazzy, and I get to properly sing, and it's just all a bit more laid back and a bit more theatrical. So we were like, well, we'll come and do it with you. I was like, I play piano, I can play piano, and Pete can play guitar. And it just kind of snowballed from there, really.
Well, that might be a good segue into this question about all your music, because you don't have a musical style that I find easy to pigeonhole. You do all kinds of stuff, from the punk stuff that you've been involved in with doing the Crass stuff, and right to pop and what could easily be called adult contemporary even. So you've got all kinds of musical and lyrical styles going on, but the lyrics that you write are they still address very serious issues, often in a personal way, and you do it with a lot of humor, or as cynical optimism, I noticed you used on, which was a great way of putting it. Can you talk about your songwriting process and your influences?
Yeah, so I'm actually this week I'm in the process of kind of whipping a new batch of songs into shape, because I'm going into the studio next week to start recording my 5th album. So in terms of process, I tend to have an idea and then quickly record it, whether it's into my phone, or if I'm at home, I'll come and I'll sit down and I'll play and I'll record into my sort of home studio setup. And sometimes the music is accompanied with all kinds of fully formed lyrics. Sometimes it's just a phrase or a hook or just a concept that is there. And then I tend to leave things and come back to them, and then come back to them again and again. So it's kind of quite a sort of bitty process. Occasionally I'll get a song that just completely, I'll sit there for an hour and it'll be finished by the end of that hour, like all the lyrics, all the music, the arrangement, and everything is just there. It just kind of all comes out together. But a lot of the time I've realized my process benefits from space, from not spending too long at the coal face, and just sort of I like it to be fun. I like it to feel like there's a bit of magic happening and like I'm excited about it. Because any creative process, it's, what's the cliche? It's like 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration, which I think is very true. You know, you get a bolt of an idea and then you have to whip it into shape. That's what the craft is. But yeah, I've definitely benefit from giving things lots of space, revisiting them a lot. And in terms of what I write about, again, I like to channel an actual idea that's come from somewhere, whether it's somewhere in the ether or somewhere in my brain that's just kind of lit up at a certain point and said, oh, here's a song idea. And I think trying to hold on to that little gem of authenticity is what I'm always aiming to do. And that's why a lot of my lyrics are very, very honest and very much about what's going on in my head and trying to make sense of it. And I guess within that is quite a large amount of vulnerability, which again, I think is important as a lyricist. I want to give my take on things and just be really honest, because then I get my emotional catharsis. But I also then open up a potential, conversation with the listener about what the things they might not want to admit to or talk about publicly, but they can maybe get something from what they hear with me doing that job for them. Something like that, anyway.
Okay. Yeah, okay. That makes sense. And yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head for what you were saying there. And then in that also, what about musical influences? Who like I noticed you collaborate with a lot of different people. You've had the opportunity to. Where do your musical influences come from yourself?
Well, I'm always excited to listen to new things. So I'm constantly, you know, if I have a conversation with somebody about and they mention a band, I'll go straight onto Spotify and I'll save their latest album to come back to and listen to them. So I feel like I'm always feeding myself like a fresh diet of music. And that might be, you know, a new album that's come out, or it might be something from, you know, the 70s that I've never heard of before and I want to explore. So it's just, I'm very much a believer in like synchronicity, and if somebody mentions something, then I'm always listening out for the little sort of clues of things I should listen to, because there's so much out there now. It's really hard to curate and figure out what to devote your time to. But I always go back, I think in terms of songwriting, I feel like my sort of canon of like chord changes, and, you know, I've been told my music's quite theatrical. Some of the songs almost sound like musical theatre. I think bands like, you know, Queen is very much, I grew up on a diet of Queen and like loads of 60s bands, obviously like the Beatles, the Stones, the Kinks. I'm a big fan of the sensational Alex Harvey band, again going back to the 70s. Elton John's definitely in there. Eurythmics, I guess a bit of Kate Bush, and then bands like people I've been listening to a lot over the last few years, really. I got quite obsessed with the Queens of the Stone Age album Like Clockwork, which is from about 10 years ago, but it just resurfaced in my sphere and I just got really into it. And then all kinds of punk bands. You know, I mean, I grew up on like pop punk, so I love Green Day. So I love a good you know, block harmony and catchy, simple poppy songs with a little bit of crunch to them. I was a huge fan of bands like Soundgarden and Therapy, like more sort of stoner rock bands when I was growing up. And then bands like, you know, Mr. Bungle, basically anything Mike Patton related, I'm into immediately. Cardiacs are a big band for me as well. The Wildhearts, I'm very fortunate to actually work with Ginger Wildheart. I think he's one of my favorite songwriters of all time, so I'm always kind of grilling him. I'm just messaging him this morning about how do you get the second verse, because I'm stuck on this song of like, you know, I've come back and I'm trying to fill the lyrics in. So I've been asking him for tips today about that. So yeah, quite a wide variety, really.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, it is. Yeah, and in there you were talking about listening to new things or things that are new to you, and that kind of segues into my next question I had here, because music seems to be a huge part of your life, but not only are you writing and performing it, you also teach it. And a lot of people, as they get older, they get jaded about new things, or these young kids today or whatever. But I noticed in an interview where you talked about, you know, the things you learn from your young students or your teenage students. And do you want to just talk about what that's like when you're working with young people, and how that could possibly be invigorating musically? Or
Yeah, I mean, I don't really teach anymore. I have like literally one or two students that I teach as a bit of a favor.
okay.
But yeah, I did teach for a lot of years. So I taught music at like sort of college level, degree level, and I also taught for years like one-to-one with students all over the world, like online. So, but yeah, I think it's really important if you're a songwriter and if you're a performer to actually have an idea of what younger people are thinking. I think that's just generally quite healthy. in life to sort of try and be in tune with what the younger generation are doing, because eventually they're gonna, it's their world, isn't it? It's not our world. And the generation above us, they're not gonna be around for a huge amount of time longer, so it's important to know what's coming. And yeah, I just think it's I'm always open to learning from people, and I think if you're a teacher, that's the best way to approach things, because it becomes more collaborative. And I'd always rather have had a student learn a song that they're excited about, rather than me forcing them to do something that they're like, well, who's this old fuddy-duddy? I've never heard of them. And it's all the same stuff. When I taught songwriting, I was always, getting my students to listen to a song they liked, and then we'd figure out the chords and figure out the pattern and the structure and what the formula was. And then I'd always be like, that's exactly the same as this song, or this song, or this song. And we go back and back and back, and we'd end up finding, a song from the 60s that was maybe the first song that did that particular trick. But I think that's really important to realize as well, is that if you're writing, your foundations are always going to be, somebody's already done them, so every single vaguely palatable chord sequence has already been done. It's already been used in a song, so don't worry about that. And it then becomes more about what your flavor is and what you bring in terms of your own experience and your tastes, and that's what shapes your songs, not the sort of chord structure.
Alcohol. I've noticed you've been very open about quitting drinking, and I quit drinking almost 10 years ago, and I know it was a huge thing in my life, but I'd like to just get you to talk about how that choice has changed your life.
Yeah, well, congratulations on doing 10 years. That's amazing.
Thank you.
I'll be 5 years in November. And I've had, before that, I had a couple of years sobriety, and then I went back to drinking again. It's been the best thing I have ever done in my entire life, to be honest. Choosing to be sober, and then more importantly, choosing to actually do the work on why I struggled with drinking and why I drank too much and what was I running from. Because that's where the real work comes in. It's like I feel like any sort of addiction is always a symptom of something, as opposed to the problem. Obviously, it is a problem if you are addicted to anything, but there's a reason for that. And when you strip away the addiction, you're left with the reason, and it can be very difficult to come to terms with that. But that in itself is a quest. It's a lifelong journey to being able to accept yourself where you are and who you are, accept life on life's terms, and just wake up every morning with a relatively clear head and know that you're going to be able to do your best at life, like whatever it throws at you that day. So that's something to be proud of, I think.
Mm-hmm. And you said something, and I was doing an interview yesterday about with people who are doing like safe supply and supervised consumption centers here for people who are addicted to or substance users. And you said something very interesting in there, because we were discussing forced sobriety or forced treatment and reasons it doesn't work. And you were saying that you need to deal with those issues that are causing that behavior. And so I don't know exactly. I guess I was just making a comment about the connection. I'm not sure there was an actual question there for you, but that part of it is very important, to deal with those issues. And
And it's that thing you say, I think you're right that forced sobriety doesn't work. You can't get sober for, your family or your partner or your friends or your employer. You have to get to the point where you have to do it for yourself. So yeah, I can totally see why being forced to do it doesn't work, and often people do just end up back in addiction because it's too painful. If they're not at the point where they're finally ready, they've hit their rock bottom and they're ready to face up to things, then you just can't force that. It's got to be the speed that you're moving at.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. I put it down as a bonus question. Can you just tell me what does it mean to be the goth Mona Lisa?
Oh,
because I saw that.
Yeah, so basically, where I lived in Manchester in England, there's a really cool museum called the Museum of Science and Industry, and they had a Leonardo da Vinci exhibition. So they had various sort of like artifacts of his, and it was all about reproductions of his artwork and things like that. And so obviously there's a reproduction of the Mona Lisa, and the museum ran a competition to find the Manchester Mona Lisa. So I submitted a photo because I'd just done a photo shoot that was very gothic, and there was this cool photo of me in a big sort of hat with massive hair. So I sent that in, and it got voted as the best photo, and I became the Manchester Mona Lisa, which basically just meant I got my portrait hung up in the exhibition along with all the Da Vinci stuff and the Mona Lisa reproduction.
Okay, because I saw mention of that, and I was like, what is that?
Yeah, there was no there was no other sort of like accolade other than that. It would have been quite cool if I'd been like like a carnival queen type thing, and I got to do things all year. But yeah, it was nothing like that.
Okay. Even though it seems like you're very busy with touring, your solo career is you're putting a lot of effort into that, and you're also collaborating with other people. But Vertiginous Drops was just released in March, and you're already working on a new album. You said you're going into the studio next week?
Yeah.
So you seem very driven to get this music out there. You've got a lot of music in you. Can you just talk about what that's like right now for you?
Well, I made a leap last year. So about 18 months ago, I stopped teaching. I was teaching part-time at that point. I stopped all my teaching hours, and I just decided to completely devote myself to being a musician and being a songwriter and an artist. So it's kind of a like a practical impetus. It's like if I keep since for the past 5 years since I started releasing my own solo material, I've put an album out roughly sort of every 18 months. And for me, that feels like quite a sensible kind of time span. It feels like I've always got a sense of purpose. So I always want to be moving forward, but it also, within that 18 months, there's enough life and enough experience and enough time to sit down and try new things as a songwriter, to sort of create something a little bit different with each album. That's kind of what I'm aiming for anyway. And yeah, I just think I find it really interesting that some people just, they'll wait 5 years between releasing albums. And I just think if you're actually a songwriter and you take yourself seriously as a songwriter, you should be writing, at least 50 songs a year. You should be able to write a song a week if that's what you're doing and you're actually spending time on it. Even if they're not, there's maybe 10 of those songs are really good and the other 40 are mediocre, you've still got to keep writing and keep improving your craft. So I just find it kind of like quite mind-boggling unless somebody's on tour forever and they just don't have time to stop and write and think. Yeah, I just think it just makes sense to me that you keep writing and releasing things, because that's what your job is, you know.
Is there any chance that I'll see you live again in Canada anytime soon? Is that something that could possibly be in the cards for the future? Or
I mean, I'd love that, you know, to come over in any iteration of band that I play with. But I mean, never say never. I mean, Steve doesn't have any hard and fast plans to retire anytime soon. So we've talked about, you know, doing more, you know, more gigs elsewhere in the world as well. So, you know, fingers crossed it'll happen.
Okay. I'd love for it to, right? I saw those shows coming up in the US and I let my passport slide during COVID. It was like, so I would have made the drive, because those are within driving distance, but I can't do it right now. I get stopped at the border. But yeah, so I think I've got through everything I wanted to know, but is there anything else you want to tell people, or anything else that's coming up that you never got in there?
Well, yeah, obviously go and listen to my albums. They're all on Spotify and YouTube and Apple Music and all the free places. And if you enjoy what you hear, then my newest album, Vertiginous Drops, I can't even say it, Vertiginous Drops, is it's still available on CD and vinyl. And what else am I doing? I'm touring the UK and Europe, supporting Sarah Borges, who's actually from Boston as well. So yeah, come and see me play live, come and see me play with my band, or come and see me play solo, or come and see me play with Slice of Life with Steve Ignorant, or the Steve Ignorant band performing the songs of Crass.
Okay. And yeah, I think that's it. Oh, there was one other thing. It's kind of a weird thing, maybe even a little bit morbid. Me and my wife were having a conversation one day about the soundtrack at our funeral, and we couldn't think of any songs we really wanted to have played there at that time. But then your song, a Song for You, came on, and we both thought that would be the perfect song. That sums everything up so well in a good way, and I guess in a way that's not morbid, because you ended off with in that positive way for people, and yeah, that was just something I wanted to tell you, I guess.
Oh, thank you. No, that's quite an honor. That's what I'm always aiming for as well. I'm always trying to balance the, you know, poignancy and sadness and emotion with just a little bit of, you know, hope and positivity, and maybe a little bit of tongue-in-cheekness. So I think if you're too far, I think I deal with quite a lot of heavy subject matter lyrically, and if you go too far into that, it can be quite tiring and not you know, I wouldn't want people to listen to an album of mine and come away feeling like worse than they did before they put it on. You know, I'd like to take people on a journey that ends with a note of hope.
Fair enough. That's
That's
nice. Yeah, so I mean, thank you for all the great music you're creating, and thank you for talking to me. So
thank you. Thanks for inviting me. It's been lovely chatting.
Great. So
yeah, I'll do that now. I'll send you a link to my pack. Yeah.
Someone's starting to use a chainsaw outside anyway.
Okay.
So.
Good timing.
All right. Thanks.
All right, lovely to meet you.
All right, thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.
Bye.